How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name's Josh Hutchinson. Today, Binksy and I are starting our series of divisional previews, and we're kicking things off with the fully loaded Atlantic Division. Ready or not, here we come. Let's hit it. Binksy, how you doing today, man?
I'm really good, man. Got 4 fantasy football drafts wrapped up. I'm really loving these mock draft episodes with Blake and the previous one that included you. It's fantasy season like across the sports, and in addition to that, it's Oktoberfest beer season, which is my favorite beer in general, and I have a lot of favorite beers. So it's just my time. Like Texas is finally not 108 degrees 30 days in a row. Like everything is looking up, and I feel good, dude. I'm ready to be here with you.
Yeah, man, I love the summer, but I love this transition into sports season, like baseball playoffs. The NFL starting this week. We've got hockey season starting, training camps coming up in a couple weeks. It's draft season for fantasy hockey. It's so exciting. I'm so pumped. Let's jump right into this, man.
Let's
We're
do
gonna
it.
we're gonna discuss each team's performance last year in the Atlantic Division, their outlook for this upcoming season, and we're gonna highlight some key players and assess their value based on their ADPs. And then we'll also give you a potential sleeper and someone to punt for each team. So let's start off. We're going to go in alphabetical order here. So we start with the Boston Bruins. DraftKings has them at plus 380 to win the division this year. So pretty good odds. They were first in the NHL last year, obviously. Very highly documented. It was a historic year, best regular season of all time. Didn't translate into playoff success, but I mean, it is what it is. They were 15th in Corsi for percentage, which is kind of surprising. 51.19%. So that was kind of middling Corsi for percentage. They were 8th in expected goals for percentage at 53.15%. And the 9th in scoring chances for percentage at 53.2%, and those are all at 5v5. They had the highest PDO in the league by far at 5v5. They had just under a 940 team save percentage, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Obviously, first in
Especially
the league.
with no clear number one goalie, right? Like
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Two guys basically in tandem. And then they were second in the league in shooting percentage of 5v5 at 9.68, which is pretty high. So a lot of things going their way. Obviously, they were a pretty good team, but a lot of luck going the Bruins' way last year. They were also 12th in the league in power play percentage at 22%. And their PDO kind of leveled out on the power play. So that's kind of what you should expect from a Boston power play. Linus Ullmark. Let's talk about goalies here. Linus Ullmark won the Vezina Trophy. He had a 59% start share in 2023. So, like you said, pretty even between him and Swayman. He was second in the league in goal save above expected at 42.4. Just crazy numbers. And then a 943 5v5 save percentage. So those are obviously amazing numbers.
Yeah.
But then let's talk about Jeremy Swayman. So he was actually 8th in the league in goal save above expected at 24. He had a 930 save percentage at 5v5, and that was in 37 games. So also outstanding numbers, like well above average, like a premium goaltending numbers. So very interesting there. I think it may be a straight tandem again. It might even be closer to 50-50 this year. Obviously, you've got the Vezina Trophy winner, so they'll probably lean a little bit towards Ullmark. But if he kind of slips up, like he slipped up in the playoffs, and maybe he was overworked. I think that they may be more inclined to give him a little more of a rest if they want him as their starter in the playoffs. So maybe that, like, for that reason, they go a little more 50-50. But Jeremy Swayman, man, like, he's going at, so Allmark, his ADP in Fantrax is 110.66, and then in Yahoo is 24.8. Obviously, there's like crazy goalies are going crazy high in Yahoo. Obviously, I don't know if we even want to talk about Yahoo ADPs because they are absolutely all over the place. I think
there's two reasons to bump that ADP. One, positional availability has not been solidified with Yahoo, right? Like, things are ugly there. And second of all, what you're referring to, like, it doesn't make sense thus far. None of it makes sense thus far.
No,
I don't like it.
Absolutely not. No, for sure. Okay, so let's talk about, we'll just talk about Fantrax ADPs. So Allmark is 110.66. Swayman is at 204.45. So he's going literally 100 picks later than Linus Allmark, and they could potentially have an even split. And he's outstanding as well. Like, and he may even take the starting job. Like, it just seems like there's a crazy amount of disparity for how comparable these two goaltenders are. So I don't know, Binksy, like, who are you taking? Like at the value that they're going at, who would you prefer, Allmark or Swayman?
Where they're going, I would prefer Allmark, but
interesting.
I want to completely encapsulate this argument by saying that where they're going, I am not taking Allmark, and I might take Swayman, but like, they're just ADPs in a vacuum. I prefer Allmark, right? Like, there are players there that feel better to me, but Swayman is potentially a phenomenal value, a 0G hero, right? We're going to be talking about 0 to hero all season long, and Swayman is a huge candidate for that pre-full draft season, for that to be just a phenomenal value. But my concern is not which goalie for Boston, but whether you want a goalie for Boston in general, right? Like, we got a lot to get through in this episode, and I don't want to harp too much on these goalies to fire off right out of the gate, but we're talking about a ridiculous PDO, right? And a very different defensive team. They brought in a high-profile defenseman who is not a defensive defenseman, right? There are going to be a ton of minutes that are eaten up for them that are not specifically for defense. And that is very concerning for me for their goaltending situation. At Apples and Ginos, we talk about goalies and team situation, and that being more indicative than anything else. And the team situation, cannot be as good as last year, and defensively points to being a little bit to much worse. So I have a lot of concerns about the goalies for Boston in general.
Yeah, no, I like that point. I think I would probably be much more inclined to pick Swayman. Obviously, I mean, it's well documented. I sometimes go more 0G than I should, like,
Probably
wait a little bit too long.
You're a little scary. You're a little scary.
I scare myself sometimes, but Swayman is definitely in the range where I would like to be picking goalies. So obviously, if the high volume starters are gone, which quite frankly, there's not many of them left anymore. There's not a ton of high volume starters in the league. Like, a lot of teams have gone tandem. So Swayman, I think, is a really nice option in those 200s in terms of ADP. Just some key signings here. They signed JVR, Milan Lucic, Morgan Geekie, Kevin Shattenkirk. I think honestly, the key subtractions tell more of a story about the Boston Bruins this year, losing David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron. This is all well documented. Everyone's talked about this already, but their center depth is pretty brutal, honestly. but then in terms of their key additions, I think JVR is probably the only one that may be fantasy relevant. I think he's probably in the top 6, 5v5. Probably won't play on the top power play, but probably PB2. I mean, Daily Faceoff has him playing with David Pastrnak and Pavel Zacha on line 1. So that's pretty interesting if they decide to split Marchand and Pastrnak up, which I think is probably not the worst idea, just to kind of spread the wealth, because their offensive depth is pretty bad. So and then on PP1, I think it's pretty much everyone is predicting that it's going to be Pastrnak, DeBrusk, Brad Marchand, Pavel Zacha, and Charlie McAvoy. There is a chance that Hampus Lindholm gets in there a little bit, and they kind of swap them in and out like they did last year. But I expect McAvoy to be there right from the beginning. I think part of the reason Lindholm played so much on PP1 was because of McAvoy's injury to start the year. And then he played pretty well when in McAvoy's absence. So it's hard to take him off of there and replace him with McAvoy when he was doing so well. So let's take a look at these key guys for the Bruins, and let's just see who you like in terms of value where they're being drafted. So David Pastrnak, last year 61 goals, 113 points. Nate's got him projected for 54 goals. Blake's got him for 57, both over 100 points. Obviously, he's a soggy boy, tons of shots. He had over 400 shots last year. Nate and Blake both have him for in the 375, 380 range. His ADP on Fantrax is 5.08. So right near the top in that top 5. Then we got Jake DeBrusk. His ADP in Fantrax is 132.96. He had 50 points last year. Nate predicts that he'll get 60. Nate thinks he'll get 69. Nice. He's a pretty good player. Gets the peripherals as well. He hits pretty well, probably around 100 hits, maybe a little bit less if he stays healthy. Brad Marchand, his ADP is 58.51. Last year was a down year for him. He didn't play a full 82 games, didn't start the year with the team. He had 21 goals, 67 points. Nate has him for 29 goals, 85 points. Blake has him for 32 goals, 83 points. So still over a point per game player based on their projections. Charlie McAvoy, Nate's got him at 9 goals, 58 points. Blake thinks he's going to get 11 goals, 69 points. Nice. And his ADP is 91.29. And then Hampus Lindholm, ADP 156.5. He's got he had 10 goals and 53 points last year. Nate and Blake both see him regressing a little bit. But what do you think, man? Like in terms of these ADPs, there's a lot of weapons on this team. Is there some value to be found, and who do you think has the most value based on where they're being drafted right now?
The value has to be with DeBrusk for me, because where you're drafting Pastrnak, we're talking about someone that had nearly 80 shots above his career high last year. And even though they're almost guaranteed to rely on him more heavily, they aren't going to be as strong offensively. So I have my concerns about Pastrnak, even though I believe that he will still be an absolute first round weapon. I have my concerns about his ability to repeat what happened in the previous season. So in that ADP 5 to 7, in that ADP 4 to 8, where we're seeing in drafts thus far, I have my concerns about him. I'm still drafting him in places, but I don't absolutely love it. It's not a total lock for me. DeBrusk, on the other hand, at almost 133 in the ADP, I feel really, really, really good about that. We're talking about a 14% shooter. The opportunity for him in the offense is going to go up. His average time on ice is up last year. There's reason to believe that it could even tick up another quarter. We're talking about 1.5 minutes from the previous season. I could see it being up to 2 minutes from the previous season for him this next season. For Marchand, and I've mentioned this on previous pods, I'm concerned that he's going to get second line minutes. I'm concerned that you're going to be drafting on name brand instead of actual value for your fantasy team. 67 points in 73 games last year, 11.5% shooting. He didn't even break 200 shots on goal in 67 games. So I have some concerns. His time on ice was down a little bit from the previous season to that. There's not a ton of clear markers to this is absolute value from these top three players, with exception to DeBrusk. And I feel like that's all ceiling, right? So I don't feel so great about his floor. The other two, the floor seems pretty good, but the ceiling doesn't seem quite as high to me. So it's a little bit more of where you want to draft them and what you want to draft them for, and what feels best to me. What I have been drafting most has absolutely been DeBrusk.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think DeBrusk is a great value at 132. I'm feeling pretty good about Brad Marchand, to be honest. I think he'll bounce back. I looked at his underlying numbers. He was one of our positive regression candidates, at least in my books. And I think if you get a point per game guy, or even maybe slightly more than that, at the end of the fifth, sixth round, that's pretty good value. So I like that position for Marchand as well. So let's keep moving. So in terms of a punt this year, I have Linus Allmark. I don't think that he's going to be starting as many games. I mean, we kind of already talked about this. I just don't think that he's going to get enough playing time to really warrant going as high as he's going. Do you have any punts, Binksy? Do you agree with that, or is there someone specific that you'd like to mention?
The strongest punt for me has got to be Allmark. There's a slight punt for me with Marchand, but that's more of 7 to 10 picks punt, versus with Allmark, where I'm just like, this is complete punting. Like I'm not going in this direction, because even if I wanted a goalie where he is going, he's not who I'm going with.
So just to note, I thought it'd be fun to mention our punts and sleepers from last year for each team. So last year I said you should punt Charlie McAvoy. I thought he was going too high. I thought he wasn't going to play enough games to warrant going as high as he was going. You disagreed, and you were right. I think
Yeah.
so. I'll take my lumps on that one. In terms of a sleeper for this year, Pavel Zacha, I think, is the obvious one. Maybe he's not a sleeper then, if it's obvious. But Nate has him for 23 goals, 59 points. Blake has him for 23 goals, 64 points. His ADP 175.73, so pretty good value there. He's going to be the top line center because there's really no one else, and he's going to play on the top power play and will likely reap the benefits of that. So I think it's only up from here for Pavel Zacha. I think he'll be even better this year than he was last year in a career high.
Briefly,
and
before we move into Buffalo, I have to say two things about Pavel Zacha. He played 82 games last year and had 57 points on only 131 shots. He is going to get a ridiculous amount of opportunity. He's shown the availability to be healthy. He shot at a very high percentage last year, 16% versus almost 11% career average. So somewhere in between that feels more comfortable. But I think the sleeper is Zacha, and it's almost automatic. But in drafts, there are so many other centers that you feel better about in that area. So, in terms of sleeper, Zacha is fantastic. I feel like at the very end of your draft, you may be able to pull Zacha out of your hat and get 70 points. I feel like they're both really low on him before we move on.
Also, last year, we both said DeBrusque for our sleeper, and I think we pretty much nailed it. So let's give ourselves a little clap for that. All right, let's go. Buffalo Sabres. They are plus 900 in DraftKings to win the division. They're everyone's sleeper to make the playoffs this year in the Eastern Conference. Last year they came fifth in the Atlantic, 1 point shy of a playoff spot. They were a middle of the pack in Corsi for percentage, scoring chances for percentage, expected goals for percentage at 5v5. But they had a 903 5v5 team save percentage, which absolutely killed them. That was 29th in the league. So their goaltending was just terrible at 5v5. They were ninth in power play percentage at 23.5. So that's really nice. Everyone's talking about the Buffalo power play. They had the fourth highest power play shooting percentage in the league, and they had below average rate stats when I took a look at the stats. So I think there might be a little bit of negative regression coming here, even though everyone is super hyped about the Buffalo power play. Maybe not as high powered as everyone's saying it is. So just proceed with caution there, I would say. In terms of the goalies, UPL had 32 starts last year. That was the most out of any goalie. They had a endless carousel of goaltenders in Buffalo last year. You never really knew who was going to start, but UPL started the most. He had an 898 5v5 save percentage, so pretty bad. His ADP this year is 234.75. Eric Comrie had an 893, so even worse. His ADP is 454.8, so almost negligible. Like he's not really being drafted. And then Devin Levi had a 916 5v5 save percentage, so it's considerably better. He had a limited sample size there at the end, just a few games played, but his ADP is 192.28, so he's going higher than the rest of them. A lot of people are predicting that he's going to be the starter. I think it's possible. Like, I think he is the best goalie of the three of them. And I think he probably should be the starter. But that being said, he is the only one on a two-way contract. So he can be sent down without going through waivers. So
most important.
So if they don't want to waive either of those, either UPL or Comrie, then Levi's going to be going down to start the year. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they waived Comrie. I don't think that he's really an asset that I don't think they really run the risk of losing him. I don't think his value is very high right now. UPL is a little different because he's still pretty young, and I think has a higher pedigree than Comrie. But yeah, I think I mean, who are you picking here? Like, are you hyped about Devin Levi? Are you taking him late in the draft? I'm a little wary of that, and a little more than I mean, at this point, like until we start seeing training camp, like what they're talking about at training camp in Buffalo.
So I want to point directly at Victor in the last mock draft, the categories mock, where he said that his dark horse contender to win the Calder was Devin Levi. And I'm like, that seems absurd to me. We're talking about a goalie with 7 games experience where he was giving up almost 3 goals a game, right? Like, if we're talking about Buffalo goalies, it's one of a 3 possible field. And as much as there are indicators which one is more viable in the long term, which one is going to go up and down, etc., I don't want any of the 3 of them. The stats don't tell me that they're going to play great defense, even if they're an offensively electric team. If I had to just put a stake in any of them, I'm going to put it in UPL, but I don't feel good about it. And man, like all of it feels very, very rough to me. Like next year, I want to talk about Devin Levi, but I mean, we're talking about like a 6th or 7th round pick that got traded. Like that's That's rough to me. Like I don't put a lot of stake in any of these Buffalo goalies, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think I'm really going to lean in that direction, even going zero G. I think I'm very interested in Buffalo goalies on the waiver wire because I think it's
Yes.
very likely that I'm going to be able to
Yes.
pick one up there. I think if Levi gets sent down at the start of the year, he'll be dropped by whatever team uh, decided to draft him, and then I'll be ready to scoop him up when he gets called back up again. But I'm not. I don't think I'm spending even any draft capital on any of these
I
guys.
think it's a real possibility that we're talking about any one of these three guys as a zero G candidate a month into the season, but drafting them, I don't want any part of it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right, let's jump into their power play. So I mean it last year for the most part it was Tage Thompson, Jeff Skinner, Alex Tuck, Dylan Cousins, Rasmus Dahlin. I don't see there really being any reason to change that. I think if there's any shuffling, I could see Cousins being moved out for a guy like Jack Quinn, or like one of the younger guys coming up. Victor Olofsson, I think, played there every once in a while, although he's kind of falling down the depth chart on Buffalo these days. So, but yeah, I see it being those five. Daily Faceoff has it like that as well. So let's jump in. Let's look for some value here. So Tage Thompson, his ADP is 14.43. Last year, he had 47 goals, 94 points. Nate's got him for 47 goals again and 92 points. Blake has him for 53 goals, 96 points. I think he's definitely a candidate for 50 goals, and pushing 100 points, probably just shy of it. So and I mean, he shoots a ton, gets power play points. So I think that's pretty good value at early second round. Rasmus Dahlin, he had a career year last year, 15 goals, 73 points. Nate's got him for 14 goals, 75 points. Blake's got him for 14 and 73. His ADP is 28.22. So going early third round in 12 team leagues. Jeff Skinner, his ADP is 82.09. Nate's got him for 34 goals, 80 points. Blake's got him for 36 goals, 79 points. Obviously shoots a ton. Alex Tuck, his ADP is 48.33, so being picked a lot sooner than Jeff Skinner. Nate's got him for 34 goals, 79 points. Blake's got him 38 goals, 79 points. And yeah, I mean, I think he's around a point per game player, very similar to Skinner. Their stats are very, very similar. So it's interesting that Skinner gets picked quite a bit later. I think there's a weird bias against Jeff Skinner for some reason. But you can definitely take advantage of that. And then Dylan Cousins, we'll touch on him next. His ADP is 120.38. Nate's got him for 29 goals, 64 points. Blake's got him for 29 goals, 72 points. Last year he had 68 points. So it kind of splits the difference between Nate and Blake's projections. Yeah, and then I mean, you threw in here Jack Quinn. Was a half point per game player last year in his rookie season. So it'll be exciting to see what he does once he's back from his injury. But in terms of value of these guys, who are you taking at the ADP that they are sitting at currently?
It's a tough argument to make because I have taken all five of these players at different slots in the draft. I feel like where you are drafting in your 10 and 12 team leagues will kind of dictate who ends up on your team. I
Yep.
feel excellent about Thompson in the 8 to 12 slot. I feel excellent about Dahlin in the 10 to 12 slot. I feel like who you drafted in the first round dictates who you want between Skinner and Tuck because you know, you were talking about the disparity in these ADPs. Well, you're talking about left wing versus right wing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
right wing dries up so quickly, you would think it's the Sahara. Like that, like one round, and you're like, okay, there's 4 or 5, maybe 6 right wings that I'm okay with. And one round later, you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do at right wing. So,
Yeah, I think I mean, I don't think it's drying up as quickly as it did last year. I feel like last year there was like a steep drop off in terms of right wingers. Now I feel like there's a few more later in the draft, but yeah, I mean you're right. There is a bit of positional scarcity there. I think Tage Thompson is nice value at the turn there in a
yeah.
12-team league. I like that a lot. Darlene, I really like that value at the start of the third round. But I think the key thing, like I mentioned before, is Skinner's production is almost identical to Alex Tuck, and is being projected very similarly, and is being picked 40 spots later than him. So for me, that's kind of the best value, in my opinion, is Jeff Skinner, potentially potentially a point per game guy, playing on that top line, top power play, at the 80, 82 ADP range. Like I like that a lot. So for me, I think it's Jeff Skinner. So my punt is Devin Levi. I know I kind of mentioned it before for the reasons that I mentioned. I just think it's such a volatile goaltending situation. And while he may be the best goalie in that system, and I think he probably should be their starter, I just don't think that you can guarantee that that's going to happen. So at least at this point, until we start seeing what they're doing at training camp, I'm not picking Devin Levi. I'm fading him hardcore. So do you have any other names there, Binksy?
No, I agree with that completely. Devin Levi is exactly who I would point to with a punt.
Yeah. Last year we said Eric Comrie, and we were definitely right about that because he was bad, very, very bad. I think people thought that he was going to be, and me myself included, I thought that he was potentially going to be their starter, and he had untapped potential, but he really, really, really struggled. So yeah, well, I mean, we'll see what happens this year. All right, in terms of sleepers, I said Jack Quinn. I think you support that as well. He has really nice underlying numbers when I looked at them. And obviously, like we mentioned, he's hurt to start the year, but I think he could bring some potential value. And he's definitely watch list material. I don't think I'm drafting him. Definitely not, especially because of his injury. But he's definitely a guy to be watching for when he comes back in December, I guess. I didn't look at the timeline, but you're saying December.
Yeah, it sounds like December.
Yeah. Okay. Last year, I said Owen Power. You said Jack Quinn. So that was your hat bet pick that you kind of got screwed on. But
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think Quinn and Perfetti ended up being pretty comparably mediocre in their rookie seasons.
I thought they were both great for like 20 total games.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
To be fair, I said Owen Power would be great in a Bangers Cats league.
You know what? I have to note this before we move on to Detroit. I'm not putting him down as a sleeper, but this is the last year of Owen Power's rookie contract. And for as many people out there, I'm looking at you, Nate, who don't believe in narratives and contract talk. These are professional athletes who play for money, and Owen Power is playing for the money right now. And he has a franchise defenseman in front of him. So there could be good things. Could be good things. That's all I'm saying.
You're not wrong about that, Binksy. All right, the Detroit Red Wings are next. They are plus 2,500 to win the Atlantic Division. Last year, they were 7th. They had pretty brutal numbers near the bottom of the league in their underlying stats: 26 in Corsi for percentage, 26 in expected goals for percentage, 28th in scoring chances for percentage. They were 26th in 5v5 team save percentage at 905. And their shooting percentage was 8.46, which is, a little bit below average. So there could be some positive regression coming their way there. They were 17th on the power play, so middle of the pack, not too bad, 21.1%. I think that's going to get a little bit better with Alex DeBrincat. So that is, he's just a weapon on the left flank. Ville Husso, yeah, so we'll talk about the goalies. Ville Husso had a 68% start share in 2023. I think that's part of the reason he struggled. He's never really played that much before, but they really didn't have another option. Alex Nedeljkovic really just turned into an absolute pumpkin, and he was completely unusable. They had to send him to the minors. They had to pick up players off of waivers to play on the second half of back-to-backs. So Husso got driven into the ground last year. He had a 908 5v5 save percentage. I think he probably bounces back. His ADP is 187.39, so he's actually a pretty nice 0G candidate because I think he'll get some volume in Detroit. And then James Reimer, who last year his 5v5 save percentage was 891, so really low for him. Like he had quite a down year last year in San Jose, but I imagine he'll bounce back too. But I don't know. I wonder if they picked him up just for a viable option, just to give Husso some rest now and again, because I'm sure they don't want him to be starting 68% of the games in Detroit. But I still think that he's their true number one and one of the more likely candidates to be a volume starter that you could get late in the draft. So very nice 0G candidate there. What do you think about the goalies, man?
I am completely in line with your sentiment about the goalies in Detroit. I think Ville played a little bit too much, and they brought in Reimer because he is a quality backup, right? I don't think there's any contention of him taking that starter position. I think they recognize that they worked Husso just a little bit too much, and kind of clearly across his career, Husso has been better with a very close to 50-50 split with lots of rest. So I think the team will be better. I think Husso will be better. I don't think Reimer is going to contend for any starter minutes. And I'm probably more excited than I should be about Husso. In a lot of my 0G slots, I have taken him. And I have thus far attributed that to, I think Detroit will be a better team. And pause and rewind to other pods if you've heard me say that before, but I really feel like Detroit will be a better team this year. And I have even more reason to say that this year than I did last year. So, so perhaps it's laughable, but I really do think that the Detroit will be a better team this year. Granted, this is a very, very tough division that they're in, and there are no guarantees about who is going to be 2 through 4 in this division. 1 is pretty well cemented, and 6 is pretty well cemented, but 2 through 4 it tends to be a little bit tougher in this particular division. But I feel good about Husso, and I feel good about the Detroit Red Wings in general. So I don't think there's competition. I feel good about him. Hopefully he doesn't get 7/10 of the start and he is a little bit better on the season, but I'm not positive that that's what makes the difference for him. Is that what's only towing you to the line for Husso?
I don't know. I think, I don't know. I feel pretty good about Husso here. I agree. I do think that Detroit's going to be better this year. I'm definitely with you there. I know their additions were not necessarily the most fantasy relevant guys, but they do get better. I think JT Compher is a good defensive player. And yeah, they just have a lot more organizational depth. So yeah, I feel pretty good about Husso, and I think bringing Reimer in, they have another viable option there. Like I mentioned, they also brought in Alex Lyon, which a lot of people didn't I mean, weren't really paying attention to, but I haven't heard really anyone talking about that. But I mean, he got a good run and played really well in Florida near the end of the season and at the start of the playoffs, even. Another option in case one of them goes down. So it seems like that is they're trying to prepare just in case something happens like it did last year, or with Nedeljkovic and with injuries, so that Husso is not the only option. So, but that being said, yeah, I still like Husso as a 0G volume starter. The top power play, it's kind of shaking out. I mean, there's definitely some debate in terms of the defensemen on this top power play, but in terms of forwards, I think it's pretty much unanimous. People are feeling like it's going to be Dylan Larkin, Alex DeBrincat, Lucas Raymond, David Perron, and then where the debate comes, is it going to be Mo Seider? Is it going to be Shane Gostisbehere? I mean, I definitely am leaning Gostisbehere, just because he's kind of a power play specialist. And I mean, I think they would probably be better suited in choosing Gostisbehere. I know Nate and Blake are both on the Gostisbehere train, and their projections kind of showed that. But I don't know. What do you think, man? Is it Seider or Gostisbehere?
I'm so torn because I am so emotionally invested in Seider, but
Yeah.
you don't bring in Gostisbehere for no reason, right? Like they didn't make the defensive change that they did and bringing in Gostisbehere with that swap and not play him on the power. We're not talking about Tony DeAngelo and a glut of offensive defensemen. We're talking about Gostisbehere in a defense where he is the offensive defenseman. Mo Seider had 5 goals last season for 42 points. He shot less than 4% on 140 shots. Obviously, in a Bangers Cats, the dude is a monster, and you're going to be taking him much earlier. But in terms of points, in terms of power play, this is not a player that I can't believe I'm saying this based on the eye test and the eye-popping goals that I've seen him pop off for. But the eye-popping goals that I've seen him pop off for are his season total.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just don't believe, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't know how Ghost is not your power play one. I don't know how that happens on their team, the way they're trying to revamp, and considering that Seider is going to eat minutes. Like he seems like a penalty kill player. He seems like a 25-minute a game player, but they have the luxury of a power play quarterback on their bench, and I just don't see how they don't use him.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you there. All right, let's find some value in these guys. So Larkin, he had 79 points last year. Nate's got him for 29 goals, 84 points. Blake's got him for 32 goals, 80 points. ADP right now, 60.7. So going fairly high for Dylan Larkin, higher than I've seen him go maybe ever. Alex DeBrincat, Nate's got him for 37 goals. Blake's got him for 43, both near a point per game. And then obviously he gets some hits too. So that's really nice. His ADP is 43.87. Yeah, he had a bit of a down year last year, but I think he's definitely going to bounce back. Lucas Raymond, Nate's got him for 21 goals, 52 points. His ADP is 179.14. David Perron, his ADP is 181.03, so just a couple spots after Raymond. Nate's got him for 24 goals, 55 points. Blake's got him for 26 goals, 59 points. He's pretty consistent, consistently around 60 points, around like just under 200 shots, and hovering around 100 hits every year. So he covers the Cats as well. So I'm still a big fan of David Perron. Mo Seider, Nate's got him for 5 goals. Blake's got him for 7. Nate's got him for 35 points. Blake's got him for 43. His ADP is 74.25. The big kicker for Mo Seider is he is a bang monster. That's Binksy's words.
All caps.
He had last year he had 190 hits and 207 blocks. So that's where the value comes for Mo Seider, and any power play time is just a plus for him. And then Shane Gostisbehere, Nate's got him for 11 goals, 46 points. Blake's got him for 12 goals, 43 points. And then his ADP is 159.9. Yeah, I mean, for me, the value is Gostisbehere. It's got to be, right? He's a power play quarterback. He's being picked pretty low. I think David Perron, there's an argument for Perron too. Like I think he's pretty consistent, and will probably be playing that top power play as well. Although I think DeBrincat is probably going to play in the spot that Perron typically plays. So maybe that hinders him. Maybe that pushes him down. We'll see. But yeah, I think Gostisbehere is my guy in terms of value where they're being drafted right now. So I don't know. Who's your guy? Do you agree with me on that?
I agree with you, given the theory that he is the power play one quarterback. If that doesn't come to fruition, and I do believe that it will happen, I think Perron is absolutely your value. I have a lot of Red Wing stacks. I think that positionally they work out in your drafts where you can get 1 to 2 of these players that really work out for you, whether they're Raymond and DeBrincat, whether they're Seider and Perron, etc. What I'm not going to be doing is drafting Dylan Larkin at the 60 to 70 mark. Like, we're talking about a player that we have perennially talked about at the 100 ADP and where you see his value. And I still see his value at the 100 mark. And for him to be going at 60 to 70 across your drafts is kind of baffling to me.
So, yeah, I definitely agree with you on Dylan Larkin. I don't think I'm picking him that high. I would definitely be fading him, especially since he's a center only. I also I want to add Alex DeBrincat is also a really good value at 43. I think that like picking I've seen him picked in the 4th round, and I'm all over Alex DeBrincat if he's still there in that area. My punt this year is Lucas Raymond. I'm just not a Raymond fan. He's bit me multiple years in a row. I just don't think that he has a very high ceiling. Like, he's a young guy, doesn't shoot a lot, doesn't really do a lot. Like, he's just kind of there. He had a lot of hype in his first year because he had a really hot stretch to start the season. I mean, obviously he's getting primo deployment, but that doesn't always mean anything. So, yeah, I mean, that's my punt here. Do you have a punt?
I'm punting Dylan Larkin at this ADP, and I feel like we're both really, really solid in saying that Gostisbehere is a sleeper at this ADP for sure.
100%. And then last year, I said Bertuzzi was a punt. You disagreed. I think I was kind of right, because he struggled most of the year.
He didn't play enough for you to claim to be right about that.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And really, in the end, like, he is. I mean, I think I was right for the wrong reasons. I guess that's the best way.
Totally fair. Totally.
And then our sleeper was Jacob Verana, and that obviously didn't go super well either. But that was also kind of right for the wrong reasons. So can't really take credit for that. All right, the Florida Panthers, they are plus 380 to win the division. They were 4th in the Atlantic last year, just made the playoffs, just barely. Excuse me. They were 3rd in Corsi for percentage, 5th in expected goals for percentage, 4th in scoring chances for percentage. They were 18th in 5v5 shooting percentage at 8.46, so a little bit below average. Actually, I thought it would be worse, but it wasn't insanely low. And then their 5v5 save percentage was actually 918, so not terrible. Actually, quite good. That's a pretty good number. They were 10th in power play percentage at 22.8%, but actually they were 24th in power play shooting percentage. So their power play was bomb. And like they could have been one of the better power plays in the league, instead of just being top third, if they had converted just a little bit, just average. So that is kind of where I think that they'll improve, and maybe positively regress. Um, they were second in power play scoring chances for in the league. So getting to the right areas, getting chances, just not converting, but still 10th in power play percentage. Sergei Bobrovsky had a 60% start share in 2023 and it had a 917 5v5 save percentage. Kind of surprising because he had some really terrible stretches,
Mm-hmm.
but where he was basically unusable and droppable. But then he had a 930 5v5 save percentage in the playoffs. I mean, if they had won the cup, he would have been an easy Conn Smythe candidate. But in the finals, he didn't show out quite as well as he did in the first three rounds. But his ADP is 165.11, so another great zero G candidate. Their other two options are Spencer Knight, who had a 919 5v5 save percentage last year, but he was in the player assistance program. We're not really sure what his status is right now. And then Anthony Stolarz, they signed him. He had a 903 in Anaheim last year. Not really excited about him at all. So I think he's probably just an insurance option just in case Knight isn't good to go.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think I'm a big fan of Bobrovsky going into next year. I think Florida is going to be very strong, and I expect that he's going to get a lot of play there. So he's a target of mine late in the draft for sure. What about you, Binksy?
I really, really like Bobrovsky as a zero G candidate, for the exact reasons you mentioned. Knight in the player assistance program has a lot of question marks, and the player that they brought in to possibly be his replacement in Stolarz doesn't raise any eyebrows, right? So the Bobrovsky that we waited on all season long reared his head in the playoffs very seriously. So you're getting a pretty steep discount on what is a cup final team, what is a strong defensive team, what should be more successful on the power play, right? Given the stats and the indicators. So I feel really, really good about the climate around Bobrovsky. We're talking about a player who got paid big bucks and had a lot of question marks last season about his play around those big bucks. And then all of a sudden in the playoffs, he was exactly who we thought he was. And towards the end of the season was exactly who we thought he was. So I feel really, really good about Bobrovsky as a zero G candidate. And given the team climate and the goalies behind him, I feel even better about it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his for sure. Key signings: they signed Evan Rodriguez, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and Nico Mikola. Couldn't really do a ton because they don't really have a ton of cap space. But Rodriguez, I think, will play a pretty significant role, at least 5v5 on this team. And then they lost Duclair and Radko Gudas, so they don't have the hit monster. But I think Rodriguez will probably slot right in, right where Anthony Duclair was, alongside Barkov. So let's talk about potential power play options because I think this is really interesting. Worth noting, just not too long ago, a couple hours ago, Bill Zito came out and talked to the media and said that Montour and Ekblad will be ready in November to January if they continue to progress. So that's a pretty weird timeline. It's very broad. It makes
I'm
it
sorry,
seem
did you say November to January?
yes. So
That's not
that's
even a
that.
timeline. Those are just months.
So that's the quote. So that makes me think because it's such a wide range of dates. That makes me think that they're not close. So I mean, that means this power play is going to look quite a bit different than it did last year. So obviously they had Barkov, Kachuk, Sam Reinhart, and then Ekblad and Montour a lot of the time. Um, I I think going forward, like this is the way I see it. I see it being Barkov, Kachuk, Reinhart, then throw Carter Verhaeghe in there as a
Mm-hmm.
weapon,
Yeah.
and then Gustav Forsling as the power play quarterback. And we're going to talk about Forsling because I'm really excited about this guy. But let's try and find some value with these Florida Panthers players. Uh, Barkov, his ADP is 28.19. Nate's got him for 37 goals, 102 points. Blake's got him for 39 and 98 to go along with 36 power play points in each of their projections. Yeah, I mean, if he could stay healthy, I think that's completely within the realm of possibility, and you're getting pretty good value picking him in the third round, which is where he's being picked in 12 team leagues. Matthew Tkachuk, Nate's got him for 39 goals, 108 points. Blake's got him for 45 and 113. Yeah, I mean he is a bona fide first round fantasy player. He's proven it over the last 2 years. Sam Reinhart, Nate and Blake both have him bouncing back from his 67-point year last year and getting back around point per game. His ADP is 87.8. Sam Bennett, his ADP is 169.32. Nate and Blake are both pretty high on him. Nate's got him for 28 goals, 62 points. Blake's got him for 27 goals, 66 points. He's a shot monster. He's a hit monster. He covers the Cats. And he just needs to convert. And Nate and Blake are both pretty excited about that. I am too. I think we've talked about it before. I think he's going to bounce back. I think he's going to break out potentially here. Carter Verhaeghe, Nate's got him for 40 goals, 77 points. Blake's got him for 43 goals, 74 points. His ADP is 63.88. So he's definitely being noticed. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
He's being drafted probably right around where he should be. Aaron Ekblad, over an 82 game pace, Nate and Blake both had of him for 17 goals and just under 50 points each. His ADP right now is 130.22. I think it would probably be higher if he didn't have the injury. And honestly, it might decrease. Like that might get worse with this news. So I'm not really, I'm not feeling super great about Ekblad, especially like he had multiple injuries that he was playing through. So I imagine, I mean, are they thinking that Montour is going to be back in November and Ekblad is back in January? That's why they've given the range for the two of them? I don't know. Maybe not. Anyways, Brandon Montour, his ADP right now is 63.31. I imagine that's going to go down as well. Nate's got him for 16 goals. Blake's got him for 15 and both around 70 points and tons of power play points. He, I think, has proven that he can run a power play and succeed. But you've got my guy Gustav Forsling that I think is going to start on the power play this year and potentially run with the opportunity. If he runs with it, I think it's going to be difficult to get it back from him. So Nate's got him for 14 goals, 43 points. Blake's got him for 13 goals, 46 points. Always has been a very, very good shooter. And he gets blocks as well. His ADP right now is 166.74. That may go up. We'll see. We'll see about that. It remains to be seen. But yeah, I'm really excited about Gustav Forsling. So I think he is my pick in terms of value. Who do you think, Binksy? Like, is there a player here that you're targeting?
I am targeting each of these players in different places, and the one I don't seem to end up with is Matthew Tkachuk because he ends up going a few picks prior than where I feel great about picking him. But for the topic at hand, I really want to focus on Ekblad and Montour and Forsling, and I want to highlight something at least thus far in the ADP. Carter Verhaeghe, 63.88. Brandon Montour, 63.31. Which player would you rather have their possible outcomes at 63, which is essentially the sixth round, the late fifth to sixth round? Which player would you rather have? I don't feel like it's a question. Like, am I wrong? I feel like it's not a question that I would rather have Verhaeghe on a wing that seems to deplete quickly than I would Brandon Montour, with so many question marks about who plays defense for the Panthers. Like, I like the Panthers defenseman. We don't know who it is, right?
Yep.
In the beginning of the season, we assume it's Forsling. To the middle of the season, we don't know who it is. And in a vacuum, it could be Ekblad, it could be Montour, it could be Forsling if he just takes the ball and runs with it, right? And all injuries aside, last season going to the year, we just assumed it was Ekblad. Yeah, we had injury concerns, but we attributed them to freak accidents. He had another one, right?
Yeah.
So the sleeper for me has to be Verhaeghe at 63. Like, the value there seems phenomenal to me. Like, so many times going through drafts, I've seen Carter Verhaeghe at the slot and felt like this is an excellent option. We're talking about a 40-goal scorer going in the sixth round. Like, this seems phenomenal to me. And I'm like, I see him in these drafts and I'm like, am I broken? Do I not know what's going on? Like, what am I missing here?
Yep. Yeah, no, I feel you for sure. I think even though he is getting more respect, he probably deserves to go a little bit higher. So yeah, I'm definitely with you there. But I just think Forsling is going to pop this year. My punt is Aaron Ekblad. I think that with the injuries and the opportunity for Forsling and Montour really popping last year, I just think he doesn't get back on power play one, and that really tanks his value. So that would be my choice for a punt. What do you think, Binksy?
I completely agree. Agree. There's so many questions at defense there for them, and Ekblad is the one that's going to cost you to spend on. And like I said, given Montour or Verhaeghe, I'm going for Verhaeghe. So it's not happening for me with Montour. The possibility is there with Ekblad, but I would much rather wait 30, 40 picks and get Forsling.
Yeah. Last year, our punt was Spencer Knight, which I think the main thing was his Yahoo ADP was ridiculously high, and he was getting picked above Bobrovsky. So that was the reason we picked him there. Obviously, again, right for the wrong reasons. But and then my sleeper is Gustav Forsling. You're saying it's for Heggie for you, or is it? Or yeah, okay,
yes.
Perfect. And then last year we agreed on Anton Lundell, which I think was a good choice, but we ended up being wrong about that. He didn't have a great year, so
he got some opportunity. I feel good about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, let's talk about the Montreal Canadiens. We won't talk about them long because they are terrible and they don't have a lot of fantasy options. Not a lot of fantasy relevance. They are plus 20,000 to win the division. So yeah, I mean, if you're a betting man and I don't know, you want to throw $1 down on the Montreal Canadiens to win the division, go for it. You'd be a rich man if it works out, but man or woman or
better
or any of yeah, exactly. They were bottom of the league in basically everything. Bottom five. They were fifth in 5v5 shooting percentage, which is crazy. So they actually were scoring at a very high percentage, 9.16%. And their 5v5 save percentage was 904. So pretty bad. They were 29th in power play percentage and 20th in power play shooting percentage. So their power play was pretty bad. But 5v5, they just couldn't stop putting the puck in the net, which is crazy. Jake Allen had a 50% start share in 2023. He had an 896 5v5 save percentage, so just terrible. His ADP is 423.59. Sam Montembeault, on the other hand, had a 916, and his ADP is 251.67. So he's actually being picked ahead of Jake Allen. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a 50-50 split here, but I don't know if you're really wanting to pick a tandem goaltender on one of the worst teams in the league, unless you're really desperate. But Montembeault did show out pretty well and did provide a little bit of value in some leagues last year, so he might be a name that you're looking at on the waiver wire. And then Caden Primo, you may see his name pop up, but he was pretty bad in 3 games as well. Casey DeSmith as well. They acquired him, so just another mediocre name. So nothing exciting there. Are you picking any Montreal goalies?
Dear God, no.
No. Okay.
No.
We'll leave it at that. They had Binksy's note here says they had a negative goal differential that was almost double that of the next team in 22-23. So
that's all you need. I wasn't even going to say it, but that's all you need.
Terrible.
That's all you need.
Terrible. Their key signings, they brought in Alex Newhook. Some people are excited about him. Anyone that looks at underlying numbers are really not at all. So yeah, not really much to say about Newhook. But let's try to find a little bit of value here. Nick Suzuki, he had 26 goals and 66 points last year. Nate and Blake have him for about the same. 22 goals, 63 points for Nate, 22 and 66 for Blake. His ADP is 138.03. So you're actually getting him at pretty good value for a potential 65 point guy playing on the top line, playing insane amount of minutes in Montreal. He's going to play with Cole Caulfield, who's our next guy. He is definitely going to be the best fantasy player on this team. His ADP is 70.56. He only played 46 games last year, but he had 26 goals and 158 shots. So very much a high volume shooter. Nate and Blake have him for 281 shots on goal. They both have the same number, and both have him for over 40 goals and over 60 points. So yeah, definitely the best fantasy player on this team. But is that good value for Cole Caulfield? Kirby Doc, I put him on here too. Nate and Blake both have him for 15 goals. His ADP is 224. I don't think you're getting a ton of value there. It's a little bit of a volatile situation. You don't know if he's going to play on the top line because you've also got Raphael Harvey Pinard. I was really scraped the bottom of the barrel for some names for Montreal here. But I mean, he had a hot stretch there at the end of the season. Had 14 goals in 34 games on 24% shooting. So nearly Kuzmenko numbers. But Nate has him for 35 points. Blake has him for 40. The big thing is he's a big peripheral guy, so that's where he could bring you some value, probably more on the waiver wire than anything, but he'll have well over 100 hits and gets a ton of blocks as a forward. Like he may be near the top of the league in blocks as a forward next year. So that remains to be seen, but he's a name, I guess. Mike Matheson, the professor.
Why?
Nate,
why is he called the professor? I still don't get this.
I don't know either, man. I didn't do that type of research. But we're calling him that, I suppose. His ADP is 115.76. So you're getting decent value for Mike Matheson. Probably going to be their PP1 quarterback. Probably not going to be a very good power play, but I digress. Nate has him for 16 goals. Blake has him for 15. And Blake's got him for 55 points. Nate's got him for 46, but he's a big shot guy. He has pretty good peripherals, so pretty good value for Mike Matheson there. I think my value pick is probably Nick Suzuki. I think getting him at 138.03, especially if you're fading centers, that's a pretty nice spot for Suzuki. So I think that's my guy there. What about you, Binksy? Who are you picking out of these guys? Are you picking any of them? I guess that's the next question.
I'm probably not picking any of them. I am interested in Harvey Pinard in Bangers leagues as a watch list candidate, as a
Yeah.
waiver wire early season candidate, depending on if he gets the deployment and just pops off. But from this list of players, the player I'm most interested in actually drafting is Kirby Doc. An
Yeah.
ADP of 224. He shot 13% on 107 shots last year for 38 points. That shot total was almost double his career. So there is a chance that he gets the opportunity to be very good. And if I'm taking a flyer on Canadiens and that's all I'm taking on Canadiens is flyers, then I'm probably looking at Kirby Doc, but none of these players excite me. I don't understand the nickname for Matheson, and I don't understand the excitement. We're talking about a player who had an average time on ice increase from 1848 to 2427 last year and still only put up 34 points.
Yeah, well, he was injured for a good chunk of the year, so there is that. But yeah, I mean, I like him for a peripheral floor and the fact that I think he's not going to be challenged for a PP1 spot. So
Okay.
that would be my argument towards Matheson.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot. Blake has
Yeah,
him for 15 goals, 55 points. Nate has him for 16 goals and 46 points. They both got him over 200 shots. I want you to call these stats for Mike Matheson because I don't believe, even being the sole proprietor of the power play for the Canadiens, I want you to call it. Is
you want
is he 20 goals? Is it
do
15?
do you want me to pull a prediction here? I think
Oh
it's
yeah.
probably I'm gonna trust the guys that did the research here. And it's probably gonna be close to 15 goals, 15, 16 goals. Yeah, I mean, this guy's got a bomb and he shoots the lights out. So I think that's probably where he's at. In terms of points, I mean, I'd probably split the difference and go 50. But I mean, the Montreal power play is pretty bad. So
All right. All right.
it's hard to know there.
So 15 goals and 50 points, the ADP 115. Do you feel good about that?
Yeah, see, the ADP is a little bit higher than I would like to be picking Matheson. I think there's other guys in that range. I don't think Seth Jones is really in that different of a spot, and I much prefer Seth Jones over Matheson, although they're in a very similar position in terms of their surroundings. So but I mean, Montreal doesn't have Connor Bedard, so that makes a huge difference for Seth
Okay.
Jones. So
All right.
I would much prefer Jones over Matheson in that range for sure. My punt, I mean, I don't really have a punt because no one's really being drafted other than Suzuki, Caulfield, Matheson. So don't really have a punt. Last year I said Kirby Doc. I was probably wrong about that, to be fair. My sleeper this year. So actually, last year we had said Mike Matheson last year. So I mean, I guess we were right about that.
Yeah, I guess so.
I suppose so. My sleeper this year, I'm saying Sean Monahan. So I think
Supposed to be healthy.
if he
Supposed to be
stays
healthy.
healthy, I think he is going to play on power play 1. He did when he was healthy last year and had a really nice stretch. So like he had a 56-point pace last year, which is, I mean, at least borderline fantasy relevant. So I think he could be a sneaky late round ad or waiver wire guy. Like he's definitely probably, I mean, I don't know if he's draftable, but he's a guy that I'm definitely watching and could potentially bring some value, at least as a streamer. So that would be my sleeper, I guess. Like, do you have anything else for Montreal, man?
I'm gonna punt my sleeper, but if I had to say a sleeper, I would say Doc. Doc is my sleeper.
All right, man. Yeah, it's not a good team for fantasy, that's for sure. All right, let's go to a really good team for fantasy, the Ottawa Senators. They are plus 1,100 to win the division. A lot of Sens fans are probably upset about that because they always think that they're going to be first in the division every single year. They're going to be better than the Leafs this year. Every year. They never are. They came sixth in the Atlantic last year, despite their claims at the start of the year that this was the year they're going to figure it out. Although they had really nice underlying numbers. So they were 12th in Corsi for percentage, 15th in expected goals for percentage, and 16th in scoring chances for percentage. So middle of the pack there. They were dead last in 5v5 shooting percentage at 7.49%. So that is definitely going to positively regress. They're going to be much better at 5v5, I would hope. They had a 907 save percentage, so very bad. So their PDO was really low. So they were extremely unlucky across the board. They were 8th in power play percentage at 23.5%. So their stars showed out on the power play, just not 5v5. They were 13th in power play shooting percentage, so right in the middle of the pack at 14.52%. So that's pretty repeatable. They brought in Eunice Corpusalo, who had a 929 5v5 save percentage last year between Columbus and LA. So, I mean, really performed well in a situation in Columbus where they really didn't have anyone to play in front of them. His ADP is 175.51. So another guy that's a really good 0G candidate that will probably get some volume. But I have my eye on Anton Forsberg. He had a 914 last year. In 5v5 save percentage, was limited due to injuries, had a really tough MCL sprain in both knees that ended his season. But this guy's been a 0G candidate for me for the last 3 years. And I think he still is. I think he's going to get more starts than people think. And if Korpisalo falters, he's genuinely a very good option moving forward. So he's not being drafted right now. So that's a guy that you don't even really have to draft. You just have to keep an eye on their goaltending situation, and put them on your watch list, and hopefully, I mean, I'm not wishing an injury on Korpisalo. I'm not wishing that he stinks, but I feel pretty good about Anton Forsberg moving forward. I think you should be keeping an eye on him. What's your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the goaltending situation in Ottawa this year?
I just don't believe in either one of these goalies. I just don't believe. I'm not a fan of either one of them. Both of them have shown me across their career that they are not to be relied on. And at best, Anton Forsberg is a watch list candidate for the beginning of the season. But earnestly, I don't expect to roster either one of them. I'm definitely not going to draft either one of them. I don't love it. I don't like it. I almost hate it. I don't quite hate it, but I almost hate it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't mind taking Korpisalo at that spot, especially going 0G, just because I mean, yeah, I don't know. I understand the reservations for people. I get the people that are like, I don't believe it. But I mean, he had pretty decent numbers last year. I liked the way he played in Columbus. I was picking him up when he was in Columbus just because he was making tons and tons of saves, even if they were losing. So he had some really nice value there. And then in LA, behind a nice defensive system, he played well. Obviously, Ottawa not as good defensively, but they are improved as well. They made some additions there. Jake Sanderson's got another year under his belt, so they have a really nice left side. But I mean, still probably not the most ideal situation for a goalie.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, 11 wins in just over 20 starts and a 921 save percentage in LA. So
yeah,
maybe I'm wrong.
The power play. This is an interesting one for Ottawa because they have so many people that could play on the power play. So Daily Faceoff has PP1 as Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, Vladdy Tarasenko, Giroux, and Shabbat, which I think is not correct. I don't think that that's the way it's going to go. I think you're probably going to have Tkachuk, Stützle, Norris, Batherson, and I mean, I hope it's Jacob Chikrin, but I mean, you could put any one of those guys, Sanderson, Shabbat, or Chikrin, in that spot, and I wouldn't be surprised. But I think Chikrin is the best option. Yeah, he's definitely my favorite defenseman on this team in terms of fantasy value. But all right, let's try and find some value. What are your thoughts on the Sens power play? Do you have any predictions there?
I feel like Brady Tkachuk is a massive value, even when you're not drafting with banger weight or banger categories. I feel like Stützle is going too high and Giroux is going too low. I feel like Tarasenko is going way too high. We talked about this on a recent podcast. I just don't believe in the ability of the player to show up and be a even nominally point per game player, right? I feel like the name brand has massively outpaced his actual production. And we're talking about a player in a new town, which generally is a dip. And I think that there are a lot of places that you could find value on this team, whether it's Brady Tkachuk later than he should be in the second round, whether it's Stützle dropping to the, say, fourth round. But the player that I actually want to target based on the ADP at 133 is Norris. Like I'm a Norris believer, but just based on the value across the ADPs, I feel really, really good about Norris at 133. That is the range that I want to get the second through fourth centers on my team at this point, the way that roster availability is shaken out. I feel really, really good about Giroux at 82. In that range, the right wings are pretty dry, and he is like top of the list for me at the point in the draft where I'm looking for a right winger. He has ended up on my team so many times because I believe in them to be better at even strength. I believe in their power play to be consistent, and I believe in him to be a bolstering middle roster player at that position.
Yeah. So let's dive into these ADPs. So Tim Stützle, his ADP is 18.25. Nate and Blake have him for between 84 and 88 points. Nate's got him for 32 goals. Blake's got him for 40. So that's quite a difference. Last year he had 39 goals and 90 points. So they have him for a bit of negative regression, which isn't a big surprise, but he has a lot of value. He's going to play on the power play no matter what. I think he's a lock on PP1, and he hits as well. So that's big for Tim Stützle. That gives him a little more value, especially in Bangers Cats. Brady Tkachuk, the Bangers Cats monster. Nate and Blake have him for between 80 and 87 points, and then with crazy peripherals, like over 350 shots. And over 250 hits. So, I mean, and then tons of power play points as well. So, this guy's an absolute monster. ADP 12.46. Tarasenko, they've got him for between 59 and 67 points. His ADP is 120.91. Norris, just a little bit lower at 133.3. Nate's got him for 63 points. Blake's got him for 53, which is weird because Blake's usually glass half full. But in this case, it's Nate. But yeah, I really like Norris at 133 as well. I think he's probably my pick. And then Claude Giroux, 82.4. They have him for between 70 and 76 points. Batherson, I mean, say what you want about him. His value is really good just because I think people are fading him because of the legal situation, or the alleged legal situation, I should say. So Nate's got him for 36 goals, 75 points. Blake's got him for 31 goals, 76 points. He shoots, he hits. He's going to play on the power play, and he's getting picked around 98.62. Thomas Chabot, they have him for around 50 points. His ADP is 118.86. Chikrin getting picked a little bit sooner at 100.79. Nate and Blake have him for tons of shots, like around 250. Nate's got him for 55 points. Blake's got him for 54. They both have him for 17 goals. So that's really, really nice for Chychrun. I mean, I think they're banking on him to get a decent amount of power play time. I hope that that's the case because I think his ceiling is so high, and he could really bust out. Jake Sanderson, they both have him for between 32 and 37 points. His ADP is 185.07. Don't know that he's incredibly fantasy relevant, maybe as like a D4 or like a bench defenseman, with the potential to kind of move up. He gets pretty decent peripherals and will play a ton, but I don't think he's going to get a ton of power play time unless there's an injury. So, man, tons of fantasy options here. But yeah, like I think I'm going to agree with you on Josh Norris. I think 133.3 people are scared because of the injury, but I could see him busting out for 60 points, over 30 goals. And he hits as well, and he's going to play on the power play. Like I really like Norris. I'm a big fan of his. And not that he's going to be like a superstar, but he's going to be a really solid late round option for you. I said my punt this year was Batherson. I mean, he's kind of boomer bust, like the ultimate boomer bust, where he's either going to give you incredible value or he's going to give you absolutely nothing because he's not going to play. So I'm staying away from Batherson, but I understand why people are picking him late because he could potentially give you really good value. What do you think about that? And what do you think about for a punt, Binksy?
Well, the Batherson kind of 0 or 100 argument, right, is based on legality. And Nate alluded to this in a recent podcast. I think it was a projection podcast where he was talking about, and at this point in the draft, when you're talking about ADP of 98, this is a droppable player on your team, right? And the possibility that he absolutely explodes is completely there, right? They are adding Tarasenko. They're essentially adding Norris. And the talent around him, no matter what happens, is going to be very, very good. So I'm higher than most on Batherson. I'm going to punt on Shabbat for two reasons. One, Chychrun is in town, right?
Yeah.
And two, he shot nearly 9% on 249 shots last year, and that was nearly 150 more shots than the previous season. And they've got Chychrun and Sanderson there to eat minutes with him. So I feel like the statistical normalcy is really, really going to dip for him coming into the season. So the punt for me is Shabbat. I don't love drafting Chychrun almost 20 slots before that, but given the option between the two of them, I'm going to take Chychrun. And the punt for me is a pretty easy Shabbat. And I actually think that the legality will break out negatively for Batherson. That's just my gut feeling. But at that point in the draft, at that 100 slot in the draft, that is massive upside. And if you're in a banger weight, if you're in a banger cat league, the upside is so much bigger than that I feel absolutely fine with that draft pick.
Yeah, no, I do agree. If it works out for him, like whoever has him is going to be thrilled. Yeah, I mean, and Blake said it really well on a recent podcast. You want to be able to cheer for the guys that you've got on your team, and I just have a hard time with that. Anyways, if he is involved, but anyways, it could be that he's absolutely not involved at all, and it's completely mum, and then I would feel really terrible. So maybe I shouldn't be talking about it so much because it's kind of been talked about ad nauseum. So let's move on from that. My sleeper this year, I mean, I think we both agree on this. It's Josh Norris. That's
Yes.
what we have there. We've already talked about this. He had a 68-point pace in 2022. He's going to be a high efficiency power play guy. And yeah, last year we said Jake Sanderson. I think that was pretty fair. He had a pretty good rookie season, like actually an outstanding rookie season.
He had some solid pops.
I think he would have much more value this year if he wasn't behind Shabbat and Chikrin. By the way, also support your Shabbat fade or punt. I'm definitely with that. All right, let's move on. We got two teams left. The Tampa Bay Lightning, they are plus 600 to win the division. They were third in the Atlantic last year, had kind of middling numbers in terms of Corsi for percentage, expected goals for percentage. But then they were eighth in scoring chances for percentage at 53.41%. They were 13th in 5v5 shooting percentage at 8.79. And had a 919 team save percentage. Obviously, they have Andrei Vasilevsky, so your 5v5 save percentage is going to be good pretty much every year. They were third in power play percentage at 25.4% and seventh in power play shooting percentage at 15.15%. But they're kind of like that every year. Like they just have a really high efficiency power play. They just have a ton of weapons on there. Kucherov and Stamkos on the flanks, and then Braden Point just cleaning things up in the middle. And yeah, their goaltending situation, as I mentioned, Andrei Vasilevsky had a 74% start share in 2023. He was a 924 at 5v5, and his ADP is 52.11. Their backup is Jonas Johansson, who had a 944 save percentage at 5v5, although it was only in 3 games played. So, I mean, not much to be said about that. He has very limited NHL experience. It's kind of shocking that they don't have anyone with any type of experience backing up Vasilevsky in case of emergency. But, I mean, he's been healthy. I mean, he doesn't really go down with an injury. So, they don't really care who's backing him up so much. So, I mean, are you drafting Vasilevsky, Binksy, or are you going full 0G? What are we talking about here?
I'm not for reasons we've gone through on a few different pods that towards the end of the season he tends to be a bit worse, right? In April he was 3-1-2 with a 3.39. In March he was 12-5-5 with a 2.82. And in February, a 9.53 with 2.77, whereas months prior to that, he was 1.69, 2.72, 2.89, 2.87, with higher win totals, with less losses in OT. Like, he has just been a better goalie in the beginning of the season, and with a start share above 70%, I'm scared, right? I'm scared, and that stacks year to year to year. And we're talking about yet another year where he is taking all of the starts and all of the starts in the playoffs. And I am scared for a bevy of reasons that all boil down to workload.
Yeah. So key signings: Calvin DeHaan, Connor Sheary. Nothing fantasy relevant there. Key losses: Ross Colton, Alex Killorn, Patrick Maroon, and Corey Perry. So a lot of depth pieces there. They're becoming really top heavy. This Tampa Bay Lightning team, a team that's been kind of, they've been a team known for their depth. I mean, they just can't afford to keep depth. Like that's just kind of the nature of a cap world in the NHL. So let's talk about the power play. So obviously, it's going to be Kucherov, Stamkos, Point. I think Brandon Hagel pretty much has a solidified spot on the power play, especially with that contract. It sounds like they're locking him in as their fourth forward. And then is it Sergachev? Is it Hedman? We don't know. It was Sergachev a good chunk of the year last year. But does Hedman move back in? Sergachev is being drafted higher than Hedman, or sooner than Hedman. but not by much. So I don't know. Who are you going with, Sergachev or Hedman here?
I got to go with Hedman based on the ADP. I don't love drafting Sergachev at 66. That feels really, really rough to me. I would much rather bet on the upside of Hedman 10, 12, 15 picks later than I would Sergachev. But I have seen across many drafts people take Sergachev with confidence, take him earlier than 65 and feel very good about it. I am bolstered in drafting Lightning players because of the loss of depth, right? We're talking about all-star level players that who are going to get more opportunity, but at defense, there's question mark between the two of these guys. And given the question mark, give me the guy at the lower ADP, especially the one with just absolutely elite track record.
Yeah, I think I agree. I agree with you there. I think Hedman at a slightly lower ADP is probably the way to go, especially because it's so up in the air, at least at this point. All right, let's talk about let's try and find some value here. So Nikita Kucherov, I think you can get him at really good value, at least based on the mock drafts that I've been a part of. Nate's got him. Nate and Blake both have him for 40 goals and between 114 and 115 points, with 45 power play points. So crazy amount of power play points. He's a huge power play guy. His ADP in Fantrax right now is 9.49. I've seen him go even lower than that.
I've seen him go much lower than that,
like considerably later than that. So I got him in the second round of a dynasty startup. It's a Bangers Cats dynasty startup, but I got him at 22. So wow. that's the kind of situation that you're seeing for Kucherov here. So I think you could get him at really good value. He's probably my pick here, but let's just venture on to some other names here. Stamkos, Nate's got him for 90 points. Blake's got him for 89. His ADP is 29.32 point. Nate's got him for 40 goals. Blake's got him for 37. So huge negative regression there for Braden Point, according to Nate and Blake. He had 51 goals last year, probably the quietest 50 goal scorer that we've seen in a long time. But he shot at a crazy high percentage. But they have him still around 85 to 90 points. His ADP is right around Stamkos, like almost exactly the same. It was 29.36. I'd probably pick Stamkos over Point there just because of the dual eligibility. Sergachev, 10 goals, 61 points according to Nate. His ADP is 65.98. And then Hedman, 14 goals, 58 points according to Nate. His ADP is 77.24. So really quite comparable numbers in terms of Nate's projections, but the ADP is, I mean, you could get Hedman about a round later than Sergachev. So I think your assessment there is probably correct. I support that completely. And then Brandon Hagel, Nate's got him for 29 goals, 67 points. I think he projects him to be on the top power play, and I think that's fair. And his ADP is 147.87. So that's actually really good value for Hagel as well. So he's definitely in that conversation too. But I think Nikita Kucherov for me is the best value, especially if he's going in the second round, like I've seen him go in a lot of mock drafts and best ball drafts. What about you, Binksy? What are you feeling here? Is there a name that sticks out for you in terms of value?
I think that all of the players that you might draft from the Lightning are all a significant value. Kucherov's been going later than I think he should have in drafts. Stamkos and Point are virtually the same player for fantasy perspective. I have concerns about Point having 235 shots on goal being a career high, and his average time on ice highest in 5 years. Stamkos average time on ice highest in 7 years. But given the lack of depth going forward for them, I think that trend should continue. We talked at length about Sergachev versus Hedman. The sleeper for me has to be Brandon Hagel. His average time on ice was up 5 full minutes in this last season. Like, he is a virtual lock to play top minutes for them. And I feel like 67 points is a pretty low projection from Nate, given that he got 64 last season, and he's going to further cement himself into this team, which is a very high efficiency team. He shot 17% on 178 last year, and I feel like that has a good chance of breaking 200 this season, and perhaps the shooting percentage goes down a little bit, but given that he's going to be the second and third option in the offense whenever he's on the ice, then I think 17% is relatively achievable, even given a bump in shots on goal. And I don't see how Hagel is not your sleeper at 147.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with that. I think that there's a strong likelihood that he plays with Kucherov and Point 5v5 as well. He played there a bit last year, not consistently, but he had a pretty strong stretch where he was there 5v5 because I think they just don't have a lot of depth. They don't have enough depth to be like loading up the top line with Stamkos. So they're going to want to probably spread the wealth a little bit. So I mean, if he's top line, top power play, like I mean, the sky's the limit for Brandon Hagel. So yeah, a 147 is a really nice spot for him for sure. I don't really have a punt because, like you said, there a lot of these guys are going at really nice value. Last year we had Alex Killorn, and he popped off for a career year. So definitely wrong about that. Our sleeper last year, though, was Mikhail Sergachev, who, I mean, had an absolute career year. So
Whoops.
does that cancel each other out? Maybe. I think that was a pretty nice pick. My sleeper this year for Tampa is a little off the board. Okay, this
Do
guy's
it.
not being drafted, and I'm not saying that you should draft this guy, but definitely a guy to keep an eye on. Mikey Asamont. So he was a guy that they got at the trade deadline from San Jose. He has unreal underlying numbers, and he could be one of these guys like Oliver Wahlstrom or guys that just aren't ever really going to get an opportunity. But worth noting, his shots per 60 and individual scoring chances for per 60 were both over 10, and his individual Corsi for per 60 was over 20 last year. So I think there's potential if he gets an opportunity higher in the lineup. And I think that it's not out of the realm of possibility just because of the lack of wing depth on this team that he could play a little bit higher than the lineup. I think he's pretty interesting. So definitely a guy to put on your watch list. Also gets really nice hits. So he has a nice peripheral floor there. It's just a matter of how much time he's going to play. So Mikey Asamont, definitely a guy to keep an eye on. Do you have any notes, Binksy? Any sleepers? Any other names you want to touch on here?
All right. So I don't necessarily want to talk about this player because I don't really know what to think, but I feel like we have to mention it or we are going to hear about it in the comments. Where do you draft Tanner Jeannot?
Right.
Is it only in a banger cat league? Is it only in banger weight? Do you feel like he's going to get enough of a bump in time on ice to be significant? Do you think that there's a chance that he returns to a 20% shooting player and has a stretch so significant that they put him in a place that is significant? Like, do you think any of that's possible? Because in 20 games last year for Tampa, he played less than 12 minutes on ice
Yeah.
and shot 5%.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not sure, man. I don't know. Like I would think that because of how much they gave up for him, that they believe in him, and because, like I mentioned with Asamont, because of the lack of depth, there is a potential for him to play higher in the lineup. So I think if he does, there's a chance that he plays with Stamkos and is able to chip in and then still get like a stupid amount of hits, probably lead the league in terms of hits from a forward.
I mean, they lost a lot of hits. We're talking about hits from Colton, Killorn, Maroon, and Perry.
Yep.
So
yep, for sure. So yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to go back to being a 20% shooter. I think that was I mean, yeah, I think it probably levels out, but he's definitely not a 5% shooter. That's for sure. But yeah, again, like he's got to play more than 11 minutes a game. Right. So, yeah, if he gets an opportunity, I like him. In terms of where I would draft him, I don't know that I would. Maybe in a Bangers Cats, I'd take him really late, like near the end of the draft. But yeah, he's a hard one to predict because I just don't like his two full seasons were just such polar opposites of each other. I don't know. What do you think, man?
I think in a banger cat league, he is for me, he's earlier than last round. Like, take that flyer on a player who is for sure going to get more minutes and for sure going to hit and could shoot more and shoot at a higher percentage. But in a point format, it's watch list only. Like wait for a pop, wait for clear minutes on ice and a clear higher shooting percentage. But I'm willing to put a flyer on it in banger weight for sure.
All right. It's the moment you've all been waiting for. It's the Toronto Maple Leafs, baby. Plus 200, the best odds to win the Atlantic Division. Definitely my pick. They were second in the Atlantic last year. In terms of their underlying stats, 16th in Corsi for percentage, 7th in expected goals for percentage, and 5th in scoring chances for percentage. So really getting to the high quality areas, these boys. They were 11th in 5v5 shooting percentage at 8.99, which is not a crazy number. That's like pretty average. That's kind of where you want to be. And then a 924 team save percentage at 5v5, which is, I mean, huge.
That seems very high given the goalie play for them last year.
100%. But both guys played really well. Like Samsonov and Matt Murray, honestly, like they turned in some great performances. Joseph Woll was, I mean, he had limited play, but when he was there, he was lights out. So I'm not incredibly surprised with that number. They were second in power play percentage at 26% and fifth in power play shooting percentage at 15.92%, but also really high in terms of scoring chances for on the power play. So not super surprising that the shooting percentage was fairly high. They, again, getting to the good areas, and they just have an overloaded top power play. Samsonov had 40 starts in 2023. He had a 927 save percentage. And his ADP this year is actually 132.77. So you are getting pretty good value with Samsonov if you're drafting him there. That's really nice on a team like Toronto that's probably going to be near the top of the league again. Joseph Woll had a 931 5v5 save percentage and is basically not even being drafted right now. So that's a guy that I am watching and may take late in the draft, because if Samsonov gets hurt or if he struggles, I think they are not going to have any issue putting Woll in the net. He played really well in the minors and looked really good at the end of the regular season and the playoffs last year. It seems like he's ready to go. And then just as an insurance piece, I believe they signed Martin Jones, who had a 903 5v5 save percentage in Seattle last year. I mean, not a great option. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they put him on waivers to start the year. But I imagine he's just there as an option just in case. We'll see though. I don't know. Maybe they're planning on making him their backup, but I just think Woll is ready to go. So it would be a shame if he didn't get that opportunity. In terms of key signings, they signed Max Domi, Tyler Bertuzzi, who both could be really nice options. I think Bertuzzi is going to play on the top line. That's where he's projected to be with Matthews and Marner. So obviously there's not really, one of the most ideal places to be in the league in terms of 5v5 deployment. Then they signed John Klingberg and Ryan Reeves. Both guys I'm not super thrilled about, but I digress. It's not about me.
A little bit about you.
Yeah, I guess so. So let's talk about. What are you doing with these goalies? Like, do you have interest in Woll? Are you taking Samsonov at 132? What do you think, man?
I am pouncing on Samsonov at 132. I don't think Martin Jones is going to steal starts. I like Woll, but I don't know how much they believe in him, especially if they brought in a veteran backup. So I have questions about Woll. I like him. I think the stats are in line, but we're also talking about a player that was brought in with no tape against secondary matchups and towards the portion of the season where Toronto did not need to win, right? So all of those places that he started were not necessarily with the intent to put him against the top opposition. So Samsonov has my belief. This point last season, I was putting my chips on Murray because I like the team situation. We talk about team situation for goalies all the time. And the same thing is true this year for Samsonov. I have concerns about health. I have concerns about his ability to be the number one guy, but it's pretty clear that they have chosen to make him the number one guy. Now, whether that's 65-35, whether that's 60-40, whether it's slightly less than that, we can't say. But drafting him at that position at 132, that feels like 0G candidate of the year to me. Like, I would so much rather have that than your Forsbergs, your slightly later than Jari, slightly later than Jack Campbell, right? Like, that just feels like gold to me. If you're waiting on a goalie, that feels like the perfect slot to do it. And this feels like the perfect situation and player to do it in.
Yeah, I think it's still maybe a little early for me to pick a goalie, but yeah, I think you're getting good value. I think you're getting
132. You still won't draft a goalie? God.
132. What's that? That's the 10th, 11th round. I mean, that's around the time that I'm starting to think of taking a goalie. But
that's for me, that has been the benchmark in drafts for where I feel good about taking 0G candidates is post 11th round. And most of the time, 10th round, I'm like, these 3, 4, 5 guys feel okay to me, but I want to go with this center, this winger, this defenseman. So I go that route instead. But 11th round and on, like that's phenomenal to me. Like, I can't, especially given the Leafs bias, like, I can't believe that you're not like ecstatic about this current ADP. Like, that feels phenomenal.
Don't get me wrong. Like, that is definitely great value for Samsonov. Like 100%. I think if you're picking him there, you're laughing. That's just my personal bias in terms of where I'm picking a goalie. But yeah, that is, like I said, that is where I'm starting to think about taking a goalie. So if he's still there, then yeah, of course, Samsonov. I'm quite happy with that. All right, let's talk about the power play. So obviously 4 forwards. It's probably going to be Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares. I think that's pretty much set in stone. This is another situation where we don't really know what defenseman is gonna get the lion's share of this power play one time. They haven't always been super stoked about Morgan Riley there. He's had some criticism. They bring in John Klingberg. Is he gonna get top power play? I mean, I think he will at points. But I also think that Morgan Riley just had such a great playoff performance. He really solidified himself as a leader of this team. So I imagine he's still going to get off the hop, going to get power play time on the top unit. But I don't know, man. Like, what do you think?
So as the offseason has gone along, I have become more and more ready to invest in the human turnstile John Klingberg, right? For the
Sure.
same reasons that we talked about Chikrin, for the same reasons that we talked about Ghost Bear, Klingberg has a really real opportunity to be the power play quarterback on. I mean, can you name a better four forward list than this power play? Like,
yeah.
I mean, you have to draft on the upside here. He's not going to give you periffs. He's not going to eat time on ice. The last 18 months of his career has been super rough, but at 188 as your fourth defenseman, the possibility that he is the quarterback for this power play is better than not, right? Like, I wouldn't even call it 50-50. I might even call it 52-48, right? Like, I think Riley, especially in the playoffs, showed up, and we're talking about a new general manager. We're talking about a new system in place, but Riley, except for the playoffs, when everything is up in the air, right? Except for the playoffs, he didn't show out in that way. And they brought in Klingberg, whose only job across his career is to be that guy, specifically that guy. That's what he's on teams to do. And they brought him in, and we joked about it last season because it was like, it was so obvious that that's what they needed, was a power play quarterback. And defensively, he's dog shit, right? But they don't need him to play defense. They need a power play quarterback. And they brought one in, and for his ADP to be 188, it doesn't seem like people believe that to be true. And you are in the hotbed. You are the Leafs guy. You're wearing an itchy brand new Leaf sweater.
Yeah.
Do you believe? Do you think that's what's going to happen?
I don't know. Maybe I just don't know enough about Klingberg other than he's shitty defensively.
God, he's the worst
to believe it. And I mean, Riley really won me over. Like, I've criticized Riley in the past too for struggling on PP1 and being indecisive and I mean, feathering shots in from the point right into the crest, just at a crazy pace on the power play. But I don't know. He just really, he kind of won me over the playoffs. So I don't know. I think it'll probably be, they'll rotate back and forth. They're both going to get power play one time, but not together, obviously.
Right.
All right, let's try and find some value here on the Leafs. I think, I mean, a lot of these guys are getting picked really early. So Austin Matthews, Nate and Blake both have him bouncing back this year. Nate's got him for 62 goals. Blake's got him for 63, both 111 points. His ADP is 4.43. I think that's exactly where you want to be picking Austin Matthews as number 4. That's kind of a locked in spot for him. You could argue maybe number 3. Some people are arguing maybe Pasternak over Matthews. I disagree. I think Matthews is a lock. I don't like Pasternak's situation as much as Matthews. And I think he's for sure going to bounce back here. Mitch Marner, Nate's got him for 107 points. That'd be a career high. His ADP is 17.95. Yeah, I mean, Marner's going to get points, man. He's playing with Matthews. He is an absolute wizard. He's going to play a stupid amount of time on ice. William Nylander, Nate's got him for 87 points again, same as this year. His ADP is 25.43. Earlier than I think he's ever, like that is the earliest he's ever been taken in drafts. I think I've been seeing him at the end of the second round almost in every single draft that I've seen. So I mean, that's probably exactly where he should be taken. But I really liked in previous years getting him at value. But but the value guy for me is John Tavares. So Nate has him for 32 goals, 76 points. He was a point per game this year, 80 points in 80 games. He shoots, he hits, he does a little bit of everything. He was first in the league in individual scoring chances, 4/60 last year, which I've harped on that a lot. And his ADP is 38.79. I've seen him go even later than that. And I feel like I'm picking him up in almost every single league that I'm in, just because he ends up falling to me in the fourth round almost every time. So I'm big on John Tavares. He's definitely my value pick. Riley, his ADP is 111.2, so probably getting pretty good value with Riley there. I think even if he doesn't have power play 1, he still brings pretty decent value because he's going to play a ton, and he plays pretty well 5v5 as well. Tyler Bertuzzi is an interesting one. Not going to get power play time other than on the second unit. Nate's got him for 25 goals, 51 points. I think his ceiling is probably quite a bit higher than that, to be honest. But his ADP is 134.64. I've heard some people say 70 points. We'll see. We'll see about that. I don't know. I think
I don't know about that.
I think without power play 1 time, I think it's going to be difficult. But there's the comparing him to Michael Bunting and how Bunting got 60 points with only playing 5v5 with Matthews and Marner. I mean, jury's still out, but I like him in that spot. He's probably the best player that's played on the wing on the top line in Toronto. But I mean, there's probably still some pretty good value there at 134. And then John Klingberg, 41 points. That's what Nate's got him at. His ADP 188.43. There probably is some value there, honestly. I had him initially as my punt. I'm not really sure about that anymore. I don't know that any of these guys should be punted. And I said that last year. Maybe that's my Leaf bias. I just like all of the players. A little bit. But I'm still not really confident about the defenseman power play situation. But I don't know. Who is your guy here? My guy is JT. Who's your value, or who's your favorite guy at the value that they're going?
So you have absolutely swayed me on Tavares, and you like banging the drum for him as a late third, early fourth, just immense value, especially with banger weight. And I'm in line with that, right? Like I certainly believe in that. Where I have questions, and I've saved this question specifically for you on the show. If you're looking at Point and Stamkos and Tavares, is Tavares third for you? Is it 1A, 1B, and then 2, or are you swayed a little bit by the upped hit numbers? Because I'm concerned a little bit. His average time on ice was down last season, under 18 minutes, right? So you're talking about drafting a top level center early in the draft at the point in the draft where value above replacement kind of almost concretely dictates that you skip a little bit later for centers. And you're talking about like, I've been getting Tavares over and over and over again. And I've done the same thing because where I'm seeing him in these drafts, he presents an immense value. But does he match up with the players in a similar tier for you, or is he clearly behind them?
I think he's behind them. I think I'm taking Point or Stamkos before him. I don't think they're much. I don't think it's a huge difference. Just because he covers the peripherals a little bit better than the other two, but both of their ceilings in terms of point totals are considerably higher than his. I think he has a really nice floor, and I think he's really predictable. But I mean, I think Stamkos and Point are going to outscore him almost undoubtedly.
Okay.
So
All right. Well, then
so,
I want to devil's advocate you. I know
Sure.
there's the beefiest episode of all time, but I want to devil's
Yeah.
advocate you right here. Tavares or Sebastian Aho? Because you're telling me point per game player, 18 plus on ice, hits a little bit, incredibly consistent, but you hate drafting Aho and you love drafting Tavares. And you get Aho, from what I've seen, a round later.
I've 100% all over John Tavares. Not even close. I don't think it's even close. I don't think Aho's ceiling in terms of point production is high enough to get me excited.
Okay.
I don't know what it is. I just have like I'm like allergic to picking Sebastian Aho.
All right.
I don't know.
I won't harp on it. I just wanted to highlight.
Yeah.
I just wanted to highlight the difference.
I think that's a good point because you are high on Aho and I'm always high on Tavares, and I think that's a good debate to have for sure. But maybe not one we should have now at 2 hours and 4 minutes.
I won't do
of this podcast.
We won't put it down. All right. So my punt is Bertuzzi because based on where they are in the lineup and based on where you're going to get them in the draft, I would much rather have Matthew Nyes and his upside versus Bertuzzi. And I want to say this for the listeners. From what we know about Bertuzzi, he is a rough and tumble player, right?
Yep.
In your mind, he's like, yes, I can get some banger weight out of it. The man doesn't hit, doesn't block. So for those of you that are thinking that, go to the stat sheet. It doesn't actually happen.
Yeah, he's a shithead. He doesn't hit though.
Exactly.
You know, like he's tenacious, but it doesn't. Yeah, exactly. It's weird. You do expect him to have higher hit totals though, for sure. My sleeper is Matthew Nyes, just like you mentioned.
Let's go.
I mean, in terms of prospects, prospect rankings, he may be slightly overrated just because he plays in Toronto, and I think Toronto prospects do get overhyped. But I think he could get consistent time in the top 6. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays with Tavares and Nylander on that line too. I think a lot of people are slotting Max Domi in that slot, but I just think that their center depth lower in the lineup is not very strong. So I could see him centering line 3, Max Domi. So I think
seems very reasonable for Max Domi to be on line 3.
Yeah. And also it seems really reasonable for Nyes to play in the top 6. I think he proved in the playoffs and at the end of the year that he belongs there. So I would like to see him get that opportunity. And I think if he does, he's a nice little sleeper and a watch list guy going into the year.
And what happens if Nylander gets traded? Right? That's almost auto nice spot. So yeah. My sleeper, I alluded to it before, but I think there's a strong possibility that John Klingberg kind of awakens from a dog shit defensive slumber and is an offensive powerhouse for them and becomes their power play 1 quarterback all year and doesn't necessarily eat minutes, doesn't necessarily eat peripherals, but is just a power play monster. I think it's a real possibility.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so.
Josh doesn't believe. He doesn't.
I mean, whatever works, man. Whatever works. As long as 5v5, he's playing in a sheltered role in the third pair. That's all that matters to me. So, and then just to close things off, last year my sleeper for the Leafs was Dennis Malgin, and yours was Michael Bunting. So, I mean, I was definitely wrong about Malgin.
I also had a hot take where he was a point per game player. So let's credit.
Well, all right. Well, that's all we have for today. That was a beefer of an episode, as Blake likes to say. Probably the beefiest episode of all time for Apples and Chinos. So sorry about that, but I hopefully you enjoyed it and got something out of it. Please leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. This is the most important time of the year for us to be on everyone's radar, and your reviews really help with that. So if you could do that, that would be awesome. Also, if you like our content, check out the Apples and Ginos Patreon. You can support the show on a monthly basis and get extra perks in season, including access to the Apples and Ginos Patron League. Hop into the Apples and Ginos Discord server. We're having lots of discussions about fantasy hockey in there, and it's a lot of fun. It's a really, really great community.
Oh yeah.
Nate's also still running best ball leagues. I believe he just posted a link for best ball number 16. So we're still going strong. You can get more information in the Discord about those. That link for the Discord is in the description of the episode. Shout outs to the band there for providing our music. Their Spotify link is in the episode description. Follow us on X, I suppose. Binksy is at Binklemania. Nate is at Apples Ginos. Blake is at Blake Creamer AG, and I'm at Just Josh and 41. Please practice safe stats and happy drafting. Have a good one, folks.
Good night, world.